I do believe that the greatest economic opportunity for the future, for the foreseeable future, next 30, 40 years, will be in clean renewable energy, because we have to rebuild and retrofit the entire energy system in the world.
Before I start introducing these amazingly accomplished gentlemen, as I was reflecting on this panel over the last couple days, I realized that they have some characteristics that they all share, that they have in common. And I want to share those with you. They have extraordinary mental and physical energy. They're able to determine relatively quickly what works and what doesn't. They don't waste their time. They're fearless pioneers and very resolute in reaching their goals. They seem to be using both the left and the right brain, not living in one side or the other too much. They have self-designed lives. They're all philanthropists, and they're all overachievers. So, so I am delighted to be here with these gentlemen. Now, I'm going to introduce each of them, give you a little bit of background, although none of them really need an introduction. We all know them, but you may not know about all of their accomplishments. So Ted Turner, here on my left. Ted founded, as you know, CNN and served as the CEO of that network for many, many years. He has 5 foundations which focus primarily on environmental protection and eliminating nuclear weapons from the world. He has 2 million acres. He's the largest private landowner in the United States. He's the only person in the world that has an endangered species, a privately funded endangered species fund. He's won the America's Cup. He's won the World Series. He has 55,000 bison, and he has 55 restaurants called Ted's Montana Grill. And he's one of the most generous philanthropists in the world. He's noted for his $1 billion contribution to the UN. And now he's focusing on renewable energy, which we'll get in a little bit later. Ted Turner. James Cameron on the end. You all know who he is. He's been described as a part scientist and a part artist. He's an award-winning director, producer, screenwriter, and inventor. And his work includes some of the great movies of all time, Titanic and Avatar, not to mention that they were the highest grossing films of all time. And he also has a whole string of exceptional documentaries to his credit, and other movies that we all know, Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens, just to mention a few. And when I was reading about James, I understand that when he came across Space Odyssey when he was very young, is that it set the course for your life.
That's right, 14.
14 years old. He also co-developed the digital 3D fusion camera system, which has contributed to underwater filming and remote vehicle technologies. And now he's focusing on climate change, on the Amazon, and the oil spill. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. James Cameron. Sam Wiley. Sam is one of America's most influential and important entrepreneurs. He's founded so many different kinds of companies. This gets into the left and right brain. University Computing, Sterling Software, Maverick Capital, Bonanza Steakhouse. You two will have to talk about restaurants. Michael Stores, and Green Mountain Energy. And he's also written a book his business memoirs, $1,000 and an Idea, which is part autobiography and part an inspirational guidebook to business, what it takes to really grow, grow, and a successful company, and the lessons that he learned and some of the homespun ideas that he had that came into fruition. He's also a major philanthropist in the valley here, and we're going to be talking with him about Green Mountain Energy because he was a pioneer. He started this company in 1997 when hardly anybody, any consumer, knew anything about renewables. Sam Wiley. Michael Polsky. Michael is the founder, president, and CEO of Invergeny LLC, founded in 2001, and it's the largest independent wind developer in the North American and European markets, and it's actively expanding its solar operations. And with the natural gas companies, he now has in his portfolio 5,000 megawatts of renewables. And before this company, Michael founded Skygen Energy in 1991, and in less than 10 years, he grew it to a 12,000 megawatt portfolio, and the company was later purchased by Calpine. When it was purchased by Calpine, he became a member of the board of directors, and then he became an executive at Calpine. He also is a philanthropist. He endows the Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Chicago. And in the 6 years, when I was talking with him yesterday, in the 6 years that it has been, since it's been founded, it is the most popular and has the highest visibility of any program in the business school. Michael Polsky. And T. Boone Pickens. He's the founder of BP Capital and the principal of BP Capital. And he has been called by the oil and gas industry one of the 100 most influential people in the petroleum century. We'll have to talk about that, the petroleum century. T. Boone came into the nation's environmental radar when he launched the Pickens Plan, which we're going to talk about today, with a $62 million advertising campaign, and he worked with the Sierra Club to promote the Pickens Plan. And it's an energy policy aimed at reducing America's dependence on foreign oil. Now this just didn't come, the Pickens Plan just didn't come out of nowhere. He has spent 35 years lobbying in Congress for a comprehensive energy plan for America. He also founded Clean Energy Corp., which is the largest natural gas or vehicular natural gas company in North America. And he's also heavily invested and interested in wind. And he was about to launch, and did start to launch, the largest wind development project in the United States. And now I understand that a somewhat revised version of that will be operating in 2011. So we're going to be talking about the Pickens Plan, and we're going to be talking about through that plan, how we can reduce our dependence on foreign oil, which we've talked about in our other sessions. T. Boone Pickens. So I'm going to start with Ted Turner. And I want to know what exactly you're doing in renewables, and why, after all of these accomplishments, you had to step into a whole nother arena of business.
First of all, I do believe that the greatest economic opportunity for the future, for the foreseeable future, next 30, 40 years, will be in clean renewable energy, because we have to rebuild and retrofit the entire energy system in the world. And energy's huge. It's probably, other than food, the single biggest thing that we have. And I wanted to get in there and set an example. in the United States, it's not easy to make good, solid alternative energy investments because we don't have a level playing field here now. The field is still tilted to the goddamn coal and oil industry. And our federal government won't do anything about it, and I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. If this government won't do it, we'll get a new government, for Christ's sake. They don't have a government in Iraq, and we're pulling out, but we don't have one here either. Well, anyway, I've got a $10 million wind array investment down in New Mexico, and we've got a customer, but it's very hard to find viable, decent investments in clean alternative energy with our current laws, and that the laws need to be changed. We need to be discouraging the things we don't want, which is coal and oil, and encouraging the things that we do want, which is wind and solar and perhaps nuclear. I'm not that opposed to that. And we've got to get on with the Pickens plan and put natural gas to work for us too. And it's good for everything. It's good for the economy. It's good for employment. It's good for the atmosphere. It's good for the planet. I mean, and if we don't do it, we're all going to be dead. So, that's another thing. So there's plenty of reasons to do it.
Well, then this next question is going to be a little sticky for you, because you are partnered on this project, the Cimarron project, which is 30 megawatts of solar. You're partnered with the Southern Company.
That's right. We're trying to co-opt the enemy and turn them into friends. Okay. I did it with the Russians, for Christ's sake. Why can't we do it with an American capitalist government? They want to have clean energy too. But the Southern Company's in the southeast, where wind and solar power is the least productive part of the country. So they've got to bring it in from a long, long way away, from the desert southwest in the case of solar, and from the Great Plains in the case of wind. And that means we've got to have a transmission system. We've got to have a national transmission system, I think, with national standards, so you can go across state lines, and it needs to be implemented right now, not 10 years from now, like everybody says it's got to be done. We got to use the same kind of laws that we did to get to condemn the. We've just got to get it done, and get it done fast, and make the laws, change the laws to where we allow it to happen. And I'm perfectly happy to have plenty of windmills and solar panels on my land and transmission lines. Because I care about my country and my friends and my grandchildren more than I do about all the other BS.
Well, that's great to hear,
well,
because
we can't do it.
Because the Southern Company their portfolio is 70% coal and 15% nuclear. And so I hope that you can, from the inside, move them down that trail faster.
Well, we're working very closely together on this on this wind. Not wind, on the solar investment down in New Mexico, and they're really, really happy. This is their first major solar investment. So I'm very encouraged that it's not going to be the utilities that are going to really stand in our way. It's just inertia.
Right. T-Boone, tell us a little bit about the Pickens plan and why you are so passionate about it.
Well, my issue is security for America, and we are importing 67% of our oil. And let me take you back to President Obama when he accepted the nomination in July of '08. He said in 10 years we will not import any oil from the Mideast. In the fourth debate with McCain, Bob Schieffer was the moderator. Schieffer and I met a week before, and he said, if you're going to ask an energy question, what would it be? I said, ask him, how long are we going to import oil from the enemy? And he said, I don't think I can ask it that way. But he did ask about importing oil, and Obama answered exactly the same, that in 10 years we will not import any oil from the Mideast. Well, if you look at the State Department, they recommend not to visit countries around the world. Well, 40% of the oil we import, they recommend we not visit. What does that tell you? They may not be friendly. So why are we so stupid? We import more oil than any other country in the world, and we import 40% of that oil from people that are not friendly to us. The interesting part of it is we don't have to do that. And that's my plan. The plan is get on domestic resources. Get on domestic resources. What are those? The biggest one that could solve the problem would be on natural gas, which is 30% cleaner than diesel. It's 30% cleaner than gasoline. California has led the way in using natural gas as an air quality, to solve air quality problems for them. But is it just natural gas? No. Get on renewables. Get on domestic resources. One that you haven't seen much of that is going to happen is they're going to start to take natural gas out of landfills. And that is real. I mean, there's a lot of natural gas there. It's not going to drift into the atmosphere. You'll be able to capture it and you'll be able to use it. Can you use fossil fuels forever? I don't know, maybe not. But you're going to use oil, you're going to use diesel, you're going to use gasoline, you're going to use natural gas, you're going to use the, on over when we get into the ethanol, everything else. But those are ours. We do have them. And 52% of your power is generated by coal. Do I like that? Not particularly. If you want to, the best use right now for natural gas would be to use it for power generation. It's much cleaner than coal. But you're going to use coal, and be realistic about it. I've been in meetings in Washington where people said, I want to shut down all the coal plants and switch it over to wind. That won't work. Wind doesn't blow all the time. You're going to have to peak wind, and it's going to be a while to happen. But I was in a meeting the other day. I'm on a board of an exploration production company, and one of the guys in there was Eastern coal power generation. And he said they're shutting down 7 of their coal plants this year and will go to natural gas. That's good. It's happening, but it doesn't happen, like Ted said, it doesn't happen fast enough. Can you make it happen faster? I'm not so sure. But it's moving. We've got it moving in our direction, which is to get on domestic resources. Conclusion to my point here, I was at the White House the other day, talked to David Axelrod for 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, he said, Mr. Pickens, you've got to understand yes is an answer. I said, yes is an answer. He said, yes, I agree with you. I agree with on what you're talking about doing. And he said, we would like to have an executive order too, which is, I said, get the president to give an executive order that all federal vehicles purchased in the future will be on domestic fuel. Not natural gas. It doesn't have to be natural gas. Get on domestic fuel. It can be the battery, it can be on biofuels, whatever you want. Get off of the stuff that we're getting from the Mideast is what I'm after. That's dangerous. We are paying for both sides of the war. If you look at the Jim Woolsey article was on April 15th, 2009 in Wall Street Journal. Woolsey, you remember, is head of CIA. He clearly shows you what's happening with the money that's used to purchase OPEC oil. And believe it or not, Rex Tillerson, the CEO of Exxon, said, we have no evidence that our petrodollars are getting in the hands of the Taliban. Really, Rex. And Rex and I had a one-on-one debate on this subject. He said, none of the oil we buy from Saudi Arabia that we can find our money goes to the Taliban. I said, no, the money goes to the Saudis, and then it goes to the royal family, and then it goes to the Taliban. He said, well, we can't follow it that far. No, because they don't want to. They don't want to follow it that far. But I can tell you, if we could dry up, the money going to OPEC, there's a lot of things could happen globally for all of us. But I can tell you that Afghan war, that is the most stupid thing. I mean, 1,121, it's horrible. 1,121 people killed, I don't know how many injured, and $345 billion spent. And what in the hell do we have for it? I talked to a company commander, Marine, had lunch with him the other day, and I said, just tell me, Donovan, what were you doing there? He said, well, my number one assignment was make friends with Afghans. We're getting people killed. That's something that the Chamber of Commerce can do. Send them over there and make friends. It's idiotic. Is what's going on, and this thing has been going on for a long, long time. You go back to Vietnam. I can take you back, not many of you here, a few of you. I can take you back to Korea. And we really didn't have a mission in Korea. When you can't follow an airplane across a line and shoot it down if it's shooting at you because it goes into another, listen, there's something wrong with the deal. You are stupid if you let somebody shoot at you anytime they want to, but you can't shoot at them all the time. Now, that's a weird deal. But I don't know what the hell we were doing there. I don't know why we have 28,000 people in South Korea today. What are they doing there? I mean, that's away from us. It doesn't make sense. If North Korea comes down over South Korea, we lose 28,000 people.
Well, we talked the other day about national security in relationship to renewables and a clean new energy economy, and you're hitting on the points that were touched on the other day, and it's absolute. I think everybody in this room realizes that it's really critical that we do reduce our dependence on foreign oil, Middle East oil, probably first. I have another question for you.
I've already taken up too much time. That happens with age. I'm not kidding you, because you think I may not ever get to talk to you all again.
Well, I have another question for you, and you are so visible and such an advocate for natural gas and as a transition fuel because you agree that we need to get into renewables. My question to you is, well, first I'll make a statement. Colorado, Wyoming, particularly, and a couple other states have been hammered, literally hammered by gas exploration and extraction, Western Colorado being point in case. And you're in a fantastic position to be an advocate for regulations and protocols, best practices for how we do that so that wildlife isn't affected, so that water isn't contaminated. Are you going to take that role as you advocate natural gas?
Am I going to take the role of?
Promoting best practices and stepping out on...
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to move that ahead of what I'm doing. The last thing I want to do is confuse the issue. I've got all kinds of things I'd like to change. And Ted does a lot better job with that than I've done. But listen, I give Ted Turner credit for opening up the world with CNN. I mean, that's... Those people didn't have any idea what went on in the United States till CNN came along. We looked at that and they said, heck, that's what we want. We don't want what we have, because they had a lousy deal. But anyway, that you know, you're gonna. I don't want to say something here that's gonna lose all credibility. But I've been drilling wells. Okay, I'll start this way. I don't care how many people you meet in the oil business in the next 5 years, none of them will have drilled as many dry holes as I have. I've drilled a lot of wells, a lot of dry holes, and a lot of producing wells. But we're talking about the fracking, and is that where you want to go, on the water?
Well, it's more than that. It's how wells, and I don't want to take a lot of time on this because we're short on time overall anyway. But the point is that you're such an advocate for going hell-bent for leather, for let's get the natural gas out there, let's convert the 18-wheelers, let's get vehicles on natural gas, and at the same time, we can't destroy the natural environment. What's happening is it's not only the fracking.
I'm ready. Okay, I got
Yeah.
it. No, nobody wants to destroy the environment. But if you look at the largest aquifer, focus on that for a second. That is from Midland, Texas to the South Dakota border going across 8 states. That we have drilled through the Ogallala, and it averages in depth from 200 feet from the surface to 700 feet from the surface. There have been thousands, hundreds of thousands of wells drilled through the Ogallala. Okay, what happened? Very simple. I mean, you drill through it, set pipe in the top of the Permian red beds, circulate the cement back to the surface, no problem. You never see it, hear of it, damage it, you don't have any problem. I do not know one problem through the Ogallala that anybody can focus on and say that the water was messed up by drilling a well. And you fracked every one of those wells. Okay, now we're talking about Rifle, Colorado, and we're up in the Piceance Basin. I was in the Piceance Basin in 1955. That's what, 200 years ago? But anyway, I didn't drill the wells, but I had overrides because the acreage that I developed was drilled, and I did have an override on that. I do not recall the aquifer up there, if there is one. And I imagine if there's any damage in the Piceance Basin, it's been probably surface water more than it has groundwater. Groundwater's below the surface, and surface water's obviously on the surface. But listen, drilling practices can take care of that. And the rules and regulations are pretty clear as to how you maintain a safe operation not to damage the environment. I believe that to be the case. Now the industry is looking at it very seriously up in Pennsylvania, Western New York, on the Marcellus Shale up there. And you've had a lot of people that have had a lot to say. I always ask them when they say, it's not safe, I said, give me an instance where it's been messed up. Just give me one and show me what happened. And so I'm not so sure that we're listening to some people that, do you listen to everybody on the environment? Probably, some longer than others. But here, damaging an aquifer, you're talking about water being 500 feet deep and the frack job taking place at 10,000 feet. There's a huge separation between 10,000 feet and 500 feet. I don't know how you get back up here and damage the aquifer. And so anybody that wants to give me a question on it, I'll try to answer it.
Well, we might have some time to open up for questions. Thank you very much. Sam, I'd like to talk about Green Mountain Energy because you started that company in 1997. The consumer was not really out there yet for renewables, but yet you've turned it into a very profitable company, and you've affected development of renewables in the market. So tell us about that.
Well, I grew up being taught to listen to the women in my life and do what the women tell me to do. And it's all right. It's all right. I had a daughter named Christiana who was in the 5th grade in a little school out in Los Angeles, and it was a place where there's a road called Mulholland Drive, and it crosses over the San Diego Freeway, right in the middle of where this San Fernando Valley is over on one side, and this Los Angeles Basin is on the other side. And one day when I was picking Christiana up from school, she said, "Daddy, what are you going to do about all this air pollution?" And I first thought, what air pollution? Well, look, well, yeah, you look out there. Los Angeles is really brown. I mean, it's really thick. You could just, and you look the other way on the San Fernando Valley. It's just, I mean, you really can see the air, and it doesn't look good. So anyway, I got to chewing on that idea. Actually, part of it was, 5th grade girls think their daddies can do something about most everything. So, what am I going to do? I guess And we did a lot of things, you know. We bought zillions of Priuses and lots of things in the families, but the one thing we got to focus on was I'd been in a business where we went up against monopolies before, once in the, when IBM had the monopoly and built a business there, and another time when the telephone company was a big monopoly, and we figured out how to give people some choice other than the choice that the monopoly gave them. And looking at the electricity industry, I said, well, basically this is characterized by state-granted monopolies in every single state in America. It's not a federal thing, it's a state by state, and the rules are different in every one of the states. The presentation just before us, they're trying to get the people who regulate things in the states to do this or that. So basically what my idea was to go to the people in a state where I could and offer them a choice. The slogan, we said, what's the mission of the company? The mission of the company is to change the way that electric power is made. And most electric power is made in the dirtiest way possible, in the dirty old coal plants. So we said, let's offer the customer a choice of something cleaner. What we offer in the state of Texas is you have two products. One is pure wind industry from the windmills that people like Boone Pickens are building out in West Texas and being brought into the city centers by a rapidly improving grid that Ted was talking about. We go to the customer and say, well, our slogan is choose wisely. It's a small planet. And so we offer a choice. If they want to choose pure wind-made electricity, it costs about 10% more. So we say, hey, this is about the price of a cup of coffee a month. Actually, it's Starbucks coffee, not, you know, it's not 7-Eleven coffee. Maybe it's 4 days worth of 7-Eleven coffee. But anyway, it doesn't cost much to make your electricity cleaner. And you're helping clean up the whole muddy old bathtub around here. So the other choice, and most people are sometimes a cup of coffee is too much. So say we have an alternate product that is priced exactly the same as TXU and the other electricity monopolies, but it's cleaner. It may not be pure wind, but it's made out of cleaner stuff. Stuff out of a gas plant is cleaner. You can mix it up with all sorts of things. So those are our choices. And slowly we've been able to build customers for it. Not in every state. The first state we went into was in California. We got actually killed in California. We didn't just lose millions of dollars, we lost tens of millions of dollars. And finally we just said, this state don't work for us. We got to go. But Pennsylvania had opened up, and they were deregulating, and they were going to let somebody offer something green, not just try to cram it down through the electricity monopoly. So we went to Pennsylvania, and we spent millions. We spent tens of millions. I still got a copy of the ad we bought then in the papers. It says, no coal, no nukes. Actually, I'm not against nukes either, Ted, but, you know, we're looking for all the customers we can get. So anyway, same story as California. We lost millions. We got killed. It was an economic failure, and we shut it down. Same story going to Ohio. For a while, we were making money in Ohio. Then basically, have kind of a little club between the big companies that own the power plants and the lawmakers in the state law. And for a while, they had a good law, but then they decided to change their mind. And so after being profitable for a while, we're dead. But then we hit the mother lode. Where was that? Not in what people think of as the greenest state in America, the state of Texas. And why? Because they don't let the lawmakers work all the time. They really don't. No, they really don't. They only let them meet every other year, and then they only let them meet for 120 days. And they only pay them about $8,000 a year, so they got to have a day job. So you can count on it, you know, that when they do make a law, it's probably something that is pretty simple and you can understand it, and it's probably pretty fair because you don't have tons of lobbies just to go lobby people because nobody works there. So you basically look at the laws in all these other states. They basically look more like Vladimir Lenin would write them, and the state laws in Texas look more like Adam Smith would write them. So Texas was a fair fight. Well, lots of us rushed in. Some of us are dead now. I mean, it's a competitive market. But, well, to give you an example, since the Great Depression started in the middle of 2007, we have grown our customer count at in excess of 20% a year. We're adding customers both who are changing their houses and also who are changing their businesses. So we're now probably the fastest growing and most profitable green electricity company in America. We're running at well over $500 million a year. We're making a profit of well over $50 million a year. So it's a green company that actually is a good investment. We have two investors. It's the Wiley family and one company that has not been getting real good press lately, but I think they're really good guys. They're called British Petroleum. And I love British Petroleum because they were there with big bucks when I needed them.
Well, now, can anybody, I noticed that you have solar, wind, and hydro that you offer, right?
Yeah, anything cleaner.
Anything cleaner, okay. And can anyone...
And actually, we're shopping. I mean, they're markets, and so you have to say what's clean, how clean, and what does it cost, and the markets are growing and they're big, and so yeah, it's different stuff.
So you're basically a retailer, and I can go in on the internet and I can sign up, regardless of where I live. I can ask for renewable energy for my business or my home.
Yes, if you're in Texas, I can sell you electricity. If you're in Oregon, I can sell you electricity. If you're in the state of New York, I can sell you electricity. In most other states, I can't sell you electricity. But what I can sell you is I can sell you carbon credits by which we can help you stop some deforestation in Latin America or wherever. That's what we did as a family, our Wiley family. There's several of us here. That's what we did last year in terms of offsetting our jet travel. There's a whole lot of us, you know. There's almost a couple of dozen. Not as many as Ted's, you know, but me and my brother got about 3 dozen when you add them all up. So we fly a lot, you know, and we've got a couple of planes. So we bought enough. We saved enough trees to offset the pollution we're causing by flying around on these Gulf Streams.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, James Cameron. You wanted Avatar to have a deeply embedded environmental message, and you were criticized for that, but you wanted it to express that mankind has an obligation to our natural resources and to treat those well. Since you've made Avatar, and Avatar's been in the market for a while, I understand that you went to the Amazon, and that was very revealing to you because that's the real life Avatar situation that you came across. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, you know, it's interesting. We were criticized mostly by kind of conservative bloggers. I mean, they were people with a real axe to grind, and I think we kind of know who they are and why and what their agenda is. For the most part, the film was celebrated for that message, that embedded message. And I think you have to look at, I think it would have been easy for them to dismiss the film as kind of, you know, Hollywood, left-wing, liberal, tree-hugging pap, except that it made $2.7 billion worldwide. And for a film to do that, it has to be very broad and deep in all markets, which means it's got to fire on all 8 cylinders. It can't be firing on 7 cylinders of action and storytelling and all that, but let's ignore this environmental stuff, this kind of spiritual or metaphysical or social responsibility aspect, like it doesn't exist. You can't ignore it. You have to say that it actually was one of the things that helped drive the film in its commercial success. So I take that as hopeful, that people around the world felt that they wanted something in their entertainment that touched them and expressed a feeling for them. Maybe it's an unformed idea a sense of something missing in their lives in terms of a connection to nature or a sense of responsibility that's not, tied to specific proximal things that are hot button issues that push people's buttons, but it's really more of a general sense that we owe something back to this planet, this mother that supports us. So I take that as hopeful. I am, however, pretty pessimistic based on what I see happening in this country with respect to the fact that a couple of years ago, before the recession, we had about 47-48% acceptance, according to polls, of the idea that climate change, global warming was real, and that it was probably anthropogenic to some degree, if not entirely. And now you're down to 34%, and this when the same polls are run again, and you guys all know the problem, but we're moving backwards. And I've heard some pretty inspiring things up here from this group of gentlemen that's in that trench every day. They're fighting this fight, they're doing this thing, they've dedicated their lives and their resources to this. But I think that a fight that's got to be talked about is we got to understand what we're up against as a human race. And I mean we as in the general public, not the people in this room. We're all in violent agreement in this room. So I'm preaching to the choir right now, but the question is how do we get this out there that climate change has got to be a major driver for a policy shift in this country and at a global level. We got only a handful of years to really make a big difference here before we're going to be playing catch up and trying to put a bunch of fingers in the dike that aren't going to really work and that are going to cost a whole bunch more money and not going to change the outcome as much. We're right at a point right now where inputs that we make can have a significant effect. But if we wind up trying to chase this thing 10, 15 years from now, well, we're not going to be able to catch up. It's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars and be much less effective. And the world that results from it is going to be a miserable place for an awful lot of people. I'm talking about hundreds of millions of people. I got 5 children. My youngest is 3 years old. So, I intend to focus a lot of my time and energy, resources, money, creativity, media savvy, whatever it is, into trying to, make a change. I'd personally be happy to invest in the right, renewable energy projects, but I think that my skill set is in media and getting people to pay attention at a public level and kind of straight talk and speaking almost to a kind of blue collar mentality. I used to be a truck driver before I was a film director. I know what it's like to barely make the rent and have those day-to-day issues that everybody's dealing with. And they look at this problem like, you've got, well, we can fix climate change on the one hand, but it's going to work against the economy. And that's not the answer. It doesn't have to be the answer even short term. Long term, I think it's pretty definite the economy is going to go in the toilet for this country if we're not a market leader in changing to clean energy. China's going to smoke us on this because they have to. They have no choice. And India too. And Europe's already well ahead of us. So we're playing catch up right now in that regard. And it's the inertia from the right. It's a well-funded disinformation campaign. It's an anti-science campaign. Then we've got the average person who has a kind of a big disconnect with the science community in this country over this issue and some other issues. But while as consumers we're perfectly happy to have all these wonderful gadgets and the internet and video phones, cameras on our cell phones and all that, which is all enabled by semiconductors and lots of technology that was fairly arcane in its early days. The invention of the semiconductor required an understanding of quantum physics. Scientists brought us all this by a methodology of understanding the natural world and the processes of the natural world. And the peer review process of science is a very robust mechanism for arriving at truth. And it's completely disconnected now from policy in this country and from public opinion. If we do not generate a mandate from the public up, it's pointless to rail against what the lawmakers and policymakers are doing because they will never do anything that the polls don't tell them to do.
Well, From your perspective, the popular culture, you obviously are a tremendous communicator through film and also personally about these issues. In the popular culture, how would you continue to frame or reframe to bring science into your films in a way that would really get the message across when we have a society where Lindsay Lohan is the #1.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Is the #1 news draw for 3 or 4 days. How do you deal with that mentality?
It's tough. I mean, our media buys right into it. You know, I mean, our conventional media buys right into it. And they'll run with those stories. But, you know, again, it's market driven. It's just telling people what they want to hear. They'd rather hear about Lindsay Lohan than about the fact that their kids and grandkids are going to be living in an untenable world with maybe only half the number of species total that currently exist. You know, nobody wants to hear about that gloom and doom. I think, look, what people want are human stories. What attracts them to Lindsay Lohan is the same thing that can attract them to stories of the people that are dedicated and passionate and actually care about this and are worried about it and are doing something about it. So, you know, I think people that are generating media product, whether it's documentary films, TV shows, movies, we have to celebrate the heroes, the people that have their headlights on right now and see the danger coming and are doing something about it for the common good. And by the way, tell the story of people that are making money at it, because that's going to be more inspiring than anything.
Yeah, that's right. Michael Polsky. You and I had a discussion yesterday that was very interesting because you have come at the renewable energy industry from pretty much a straight-on business opportunity. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I sort of been trained as an energy engineer, and in late 70s in the United States, they changed the law. They allow for private ownership of the power plants. And I, by the way, came from Ukraine, and I thought owning power plant in the communist world, certainly that was not one thing to own. So I got into this business sort of called independent energy at that time. They called cogeneration, and you know, I found a guy who you know, gave me some money to start a business, and you know, we started. It was very successful. Then I left, and I started another one, basically building big natural gas plants, because I thought that was sort of big thing to come. And then I sold in 2000, and I started a new company, because at that time sort of we had oversupply of energy, and you know, market would start collapsing, and I thought it'd be a good idea to buy power plants from those that built before on the cheap. And that worked out pretty good, but you know, I sort of had a lot of development experience, how to go and build a business and develop new project, and I started looking for another trend. And again, I was sort of on the opposite side. I've never been an environmentalist. As a matter of fact, when I build power plants, even gas plants, people always fight you. Nobody wants even a gas plant next to you, despite of gas as a clean fuel, because people feel to have power plant next to you is a bad thing to have. And then I look around and I thought, oh, wait a minute. It was about 2003, and I said, so natural gas and you know, oil prices start to rise. After September 11, people start talking about national security. I saw some movement sort of against coal and pro-environmental. People start to be more aware of carbon emissions and things like that. And plus, I thought, first of all, that's something clean that probably fewer people will fight at the end of the day. The way you deploy these projects, generally in rural community, so there is a good potential for redistribution of wealth. Money would not go there otherwise. And I thought, gee, this is a great thing. I mean, how can anybody fight this? You know, let's get into it. So I started in 2003 in energy, you know, and by the way, from the renewable energy at that time. And still now wind sort of dominating source, because, and I got into this field sort of with the idea sort of as a business guy that we're gonna sort of do a lot of good things. But then I realized pretty quickly that even if from wind or from renewable you generate energy very cheaply, even below what it would do from coal, you can't sell it because there is no market. Because there is an existing infrastructure, there are utilities that basically generate from where they want, okay, and how they want, and sell to the consumers, okay. So I realized that really, even if you have the best thing, and in this country, we like to talk about market economy, how we're so market driven and everything is a market, and it's true in high tech. If you come up with a new gadget and a product and a new iPhone, people want to buy, and energy is different. We don't generate anything new. We generate the same kilowatt hours, the same BTUs that come from other fuels, so there is no really differentiation for people out there who buy, despite of Green Mountain Energy, maybe they make difference for people in this audience, but for a lot of people, it doesn't make a lot of difference. So, plus market is very tight. It's sort of predisposed against incumbents, and you can't sell anything. And this is the biggest problem of renewable energy, despite that government putting billions of dollars in R&D business, is not going to go anywhere unless and until we have markets. So as a businessman, I was very kind of frustrated that lack of markets. You go to utilities, and like I said, you offer them cheaper. They don't want to buy because they don't make money on your stuff. They make money on their stuff. So that's why they want to run coal plants and everything. Utilities are in the business to make money, shareholders, and not to improve life of American people, okay? That's the bottom line. And we basically, we let utility to drive our energy policy, where electricity coming from indirectly. Now, if I would be in their place and I would be shareholder and I can make money running coal, it's hard to blame them for why should they sort of make worse for themselves? That's why at the end of the day, and speakers here repeat time after time, we need a policy. With energy, we need a policy. It's not iPhone. You create because we need a policy so we can break the existing system and really create new environment here. And one more thing, and also we sleep sometimes at this economic analysis and, what's the cheapest, why, in this country we want to go least cost. Electricity is still the cheapest thing. I read the other article that people say that per month, average family spends more time for cable TV and for cell phone than for electricity. Okay, and yet people cry if we want to put renewable energy and increase the bill by $1, there is an outcry. How can you do this? And nobody gives up their cell phone or cable company reduces number of channels. CNN, by the way, comes free. So, but with electricity, somehow we were told that we don't want to pay $1 more to be a lot cleaner, which to me it's just totally ridiculous. I think most of the consumer would pay a little bit more.
So that leads right into a general question to all of you, is what do you think is really going on with the American psyche? And how, picking up on your comment, Jim, and on yours, Michael, what do we really do to shift that focus of attention to the things that are really, really important? What we've been talking about. What do we do?
I think we got to fight against these coal and oil lobbies that have such a lock on policy in this country and are creating such disinformation at a public level. We got to get people to wake up and realize that these problems are real, not just national security and the economy, but the issue of climate change and what it's really going to mean for them in their lives and the lives of their kids. I think you got to make it emotional. You got to make it emotional for them. I don't think there's a family out there that wouldn't spend an extra, few bucks a month to get a better education for their kids or better health care for their kids. I mean, people really care and are protective of their children. It's part of the human psyche. And if they understand that this is going to, what's happening right now, what's being sort of foisted upon them in the way these stories are covered by the media and so on, is really going to affect the bottom line health and security of their children, that's the way you got to reach them.
I go to Washington and I lobby, and there's nobody better lobbyists than the people in this room. How many of y'all directly go to Washington, a couple times a year and lobby these critical senators? Raise your hand. Well, it's a small minority of the people in the room. I mean, because there's nothing stronger than a concerned citizen going up there and talk about your children and grandchildren and the senators' grandchildren and children or the congressman. Just tell them that, you want to see a future for humanity. We don't want to be like the bonobos or bonobos and be gone together. We want to be here together. That's where we're out here to save the bonobos, but we're out here to save the humans too. And there's nothing you can do stronger that works better than to go to Washington and talk to the congressmen and senators. And don't worry about the fact that they don't agree with you. Enough people going. We're going to have to outwork the opposition. We can't outspend them, but we can outwork them. And we've got right on our side, and that means an awful lot. I mean, in the end, if right doesn't win, then maybe it's best that we're not here. We're going to get what we deserve. We're going to get what we earn.
When I launched the Pickens plan in July of '08 and spent the $62 million, people asked me, did you get your money's worth? I think so. But when you look at it, what exactly did I accomplish? I got 1,700,000 people signed up with me in the Pickens plan, and that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Some of you are in that army, and it changed a little bit as it progressed, and I was heavy on the wind with the windmills. Some of you saw the ads, probably all of you did. But as it unfolded and the people signed up with me, and I had always was to get on our own resources in America and get off of the enemy's oil. We had to do that because I felt like that could end up in a disaster, and it could happen very quickly for us. So, but as it progressed, and I had 1,700,000, I can tell you, when I lobby in Washington now, it's very common for a congressman or senator to say, if this works out this way, the way we're talking, will your army come in and help? And you think, oh my God, they really are tuned in on all these people that have signed up with me. And I sort of act like the Army's in the parking lot. That's it. We're in good communication, go around together a lot, and kind of. I'm not lying, but I'm leading them to believe that this crowd is moving around with me almost. But I talk to that. I make a boon cam every week on that to bring them up to date on where we stand on everything. I believe that I gave a blueprint to somebody in the future. And let me tell you what it is. If you can go there you can go before the American people and you can convince them, one, this is not a political issue. It's about America. It's something that it meets the needs of generations in the future. I've got a lot of young people that are signed up on that. And when I go to a college campus, and I've done 38 town hall meetings, that when I go on a college campus, I have people come up to me and they say that look, we want to get on board. We realize it's about us, that not so much you, but younger generations and all, which is true. But I think I left a blueprint there now let me back up a few months, and we're in the health care deal, and I don't believe that the majority of the American people like the health care plan, but I can read polls too. And so there, if you had somebody that the people looked at and said, that guy's not political, and he is telling us the truth about the health care, I think that person could have said to the American people, look, these are the 3 or 4 points. I don't know whether you could have boiled it down as to the issue as easily as I could for energy. But if they could have, and they said these are the 3 or 4 points, You sign up with me, and together from the grassroots, we will start to drive the train. And I think they could have signed up 10 million people in a matter of a short time. And those 10 million people, when you have 10 million people, you're talking about swinging a national election. And I can tell you that rings a big bell with those people in Washington. But right now, when James says what he does and where the problems are and everything, and how we can solve the problem, right now we're at the mercy of Washington. And I can tell you that the biggest missing link in that crowd is leadership. I mean, it is damn near non-existent. And so when you go there, they start, if they like your plan and think it's a good idea, it's usually because it'll help them get reelected, is the way it works. And they do watch the polls. That's the most important thing to them. What's on the news every day, not what's good for America. And can I convince the American people this should be done and it has to be done? That's not what they think about. They think about re-election. So I don't know. We're working with a pretty, I would say, weak crowd that are going to get what's done that we need to have done. And I don't know exactly. I think you do it from the grassroots.
Well, that's how democracy works. If you work democracy, democracy works for you. And the deniers have been working democracy. They're very well organized. We heard about that yesterday. And they craft their message in a way that we have not been able to yet popularize this in a way that that you've done with Avatar, just with that one piece of protecting the forests. Last question, we only have a couple minutes. Last question. If we fast forward to 2050, do you think, given the problems and the solutions that are out there, do you think that the future generation will look back and say, they got it done, they moved the needle?
Be specific on moving the needle to what?
Moving the needle away from this planet-devastating climate change that 98% of the science is telling us is coming if we don't change our ways, our energy ways.
There's not going to be any statues of George Bush, but the question is, how are they able to look back and distinguish the amount of pain and misery that they are experiencing from what they could have experienced based on what we're doing right now and in the next 10 years. That's going to be pretty hard for them to parse out. I think from 50 years from now or 40 years from now, people are going to look back and say, what the hell were y'all thinking for the whole latter part of the 20th century and first part of the 21st?
Why do you single out George Bush?
The younger.
Yeah, but why?
Because it was 8 years of moving backwards at a critical juncture in history.
But if you look at 40 years...
This is maybe another debate that we want to have.
No, it's not. Listen, I have real issues on George Bush, but if you look back the 40 years, Jon Stewart, the Daily Show, that he does a fabulous job of taking you back to presidents, clear back to Nixon, and taking you through what all of them said. All of them told us that you have a problem on importing all the oil we are. And we will get, you elect me, and we'll get it fixed. You kidding me? Not a one of them, I don't care whether they were Democrat or Republican. Nobody did one thing to fix the problem. But click on that, go on Pickens' plan and type in Jon Stewart. It is a fabulous 4-minute deal that Jon Stewart gives on energy. But I don't know whether you're going to, I don't know. I think we get there. Yeah, I think we get there.
And I'll just insert quickly. In President Nixon's term, we were importing 36% foreign oil. And right now, it's 67.5%. And every president, as T. Boone said, has said we are going to get off foreign oil. And it hasn't happened, and it hasn't happened because we haven't come from the grassroots and made a case. Michael, you had something.
But I just want to say one thing. You know, with energy, again, it's because, and people are saying, it does not take to do things overnight. And we, as a country, we can do things overnight if we have a crisis, huge crisis. And with the global warming, despite, like I said, Katrina, you know, we don't believe anything. But my point is, I hate to say, but we have to have long-term policy. And long-term policy does not come from the marketplace. And that's why I agree with you, Tad, that people have to go and convince those people in Washington we need a policy, because they run economic analysis and tell us we can't afford to do anything. And this is fundamental problem here that you know, we don't, and even those, and I go to Washington myself, and I try to tell these people and try to convince them, and they may believe at home with their families, but you know, but they collect money from utilities, from oil companies, from really large industries that don't want to change things. So, and nobody listens to the American people, to people that really want to make the difference. That's why I feel in 2050 we may have the same panel here if we're still alive. No, we won't be alive, but I mean the human race will be alive, and then we will discuss the same thing.
We have the best laws money can buy. Sam. Sam.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I'm far more hopeful. I think if you look at, there is a huge disconnect between people who make laws and the nation's capital and what people think at home. You look at the polling, I mean, 80% of the people say, hey, there really is a problem. There is a problem with the earth. And it is a problem created by those of us who are here or who have been here for the last 150 years. And I think gradually people are coming to understand there are things that can be done about it. And I think they're coming to understand things are done at all levels. Not just in Washington, D.C., actually, in terms of electricity, more things are done in the state capitals. Basically, Washington doesn't have anything to do with it. They're done in counties. Pitkin County will loan you money to put a solar roof on your house. I mean, things are being done everywhere, and there are zillions of solutions. If I look to what kind of policy solution, you can't just solve it for Pitkin County or for the state of Texas or for the US of A. You got to solve it for the whole world, because the whole world is where it comes from. So what I lay out in my book is what we need is what I call a carbon consumption tariff and tax. It's an internal tax that puts a cost on carbon and the other poisons. If you hit it on carbon, you get all these others. So it's an internal tax within the nation, but it's also an external tax on goods made in every single different town in China. You can't just have one China carbon tariff. You got it because there's 50 Chinas, but you can do it. I mean, you got the GPSs. I mean, you can identify every iPhone and iPad in every place all over the world. You can, if there's a will, if there's national will, and actually American will is already way behind European will and some other places. Americans, if Americans, and they will, because 80% of them want to do something. So collectively, ultimately, we will and the world will. And we can clean the place up, and it doesn't really cost an awful lot. It's kind of like buying an insurance policy. It really, the cost of cleaning it is far below the cost of the benefit you get when it really is a clean world.
Well, with that, we conclude this session. Thank you very much.
We've got the sun, and we have the technology to convert it to electricity. We have the wind. We can do it. We have the geothermal. And we know what to do. Why don't we just do it? It's only lethargy and the lobbying ability of the coal and oil industries to shut us down. And I don't like it worth a darn. And I'm fighting it. And that's why I'm here.
Good for you.
Thanks so much.
thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out. It's a treat for me to be here with my friends Ted and Boone. Both have been active, energetic, and I think really important figures in shaping and driving the energy climate debate in this country. I thought I'd just begin to give both of you a chance to talk about, Ted, I'll start with you. What got you interested in this issue? You've been interested in a lot of issues, from the UN to media, but I know from our conversations over the years how passionate you've become about the energy climate issue. Give us your perspective on it, Ted. How did you seize on this?
Well, I got interested, I'm a journalist. I didn't go to journalism school, and my total experience before I started CNN with journalism was delivering the paper when I was a boy on my bicycle. I was a paper boy. But being around journalism, so I was responsible for CNN's editorial policy. I studied it. I said, I better learn something about it because we're going to go on the air pretty soon. And I just got in the habit of studying the important critical issues and trying to see if I could report them with CNN, and then whether or not we could do something about them. Because versus the Cold War worried me. And I went over and got to know the Russians and made friends with them and set up the goodwill games and tried to bring our two countries closer together, and it worked. I mean, it wasn't just me. I mean, right. John Denver went over there and sang, and that helped too, but I'll tell you. But an enemy is just a friend in disguise. I've even made peace with Rupert Murdoch, and that wasn't easy. So that's how and when I read about global warming, I'm an environmentalist, and I understand how the Earth's systems work pretty well, and it was terrifying to me, but it made sense. I mean, all that, those emissions that we had to be generating from our coal-burning plants, I saw the smoke go into the atmosphere. You got to be not a very smart person not to get it, I'm just surprised, amazed, and disappointed in our government and us, because our government's us, that we haven't been successful in getting a really strong energy bill through. I mean, here we are doing Kyoto all over again, and this time we're running out of time. Well, I don't think we really have any choice but to, if we want to survive and want our children to have a decent, and grandchildren to have a decent life, we've got to get rid of, phase out fossil fuels, with the exception of natural gas, which we should use as a transition fuel. But we've got the sun, and we have the technology to convert it to electricity. We have the wind. We can do it. We have the geothermal. And we know what to do. Why don't we just do it? It's only lethargy and the lobbying ability of the coal and oil industries to shut us down, and I don't like it worth a darn, and I'm fighting it, and that's why I'm here.
Good for you. Thanks so much. Boone, share with us your own journey from oil man to leader in this really, I think, global campaign you've been mounting.
I come up on a kind of a strange direction. One, the global warming, being a geologist, that's not an easy sell. And I'm one of the few geologists that, and the way I respond to that, I'm convinced that we can't wait 20 years to confirm global warming, that you better start to work on it now. And if we've made a mistake, it'll be a mistake in the right direction. So I'm ready to. But I'm a geologist, and I've looked for oil and gas my whole career. I got out of school in 1951, and I've been in the business forever. I never, finding oil, that was what I was paid to do. I've had people say, oh, he's now repenting because he found so much oil, and he's a big part of the problem as far as global warming, and he's trying to some way apologize for what he's done. I wish I'd found that much oil. I didn't. I didn't. I mostly worked in gas-prone areas. I didn't work in oil areas, but we found oil, and I was always happy when we did too. But I started on natural gas as a transportation fuel in 1988, and I believed that I could penetrate the market. That this was so clear. It was cheap, it was clean, and it was ours. And I thought, gosh, what a sales pitch. Anybody can sell that. I can do it in 3 years. Well, that was 88. And here I am 22 years later, and I haven't gotten it done yet, but I will, because we're going to go down in history as the dumbest crowd that ever came to town. That here we are with 4,000 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which is 3 times barrels of oil equivalent to what the Saudis have in oil. It's 700 billion barrels of oil equivalent. It's cleaner and it's cheaper and it's ours. We should, our leadership in Washington should really understand what has happened in this country, and it's happened in the last 5 years, that we've come up with all this natural gas. Now we have to use it. I don't understand. Honestly, if I was President of the United States, I would say I'm getting ready to reduce dependency on foreign oil, and I'll be the first president in the history of America that ever reduced dependency on foreign oil. And he can say that honestly. I don't know whether he doesn't understand it or he's too busy on something else.
Well, let me pick up on that, because we've talked about this a little before. You've met with the president. You've gone to the White House a lot, I know. What's the problem?
Where what?
What's the problem? Why you said you don't understand whether he doesn't understand, or what's blocking it? We're going to talk about the Congress in a second.
I don't
but I want to know from the White House. You've had a lot of discussions there.
I've had one meeting with him that lasted an hour and 20 minutes, and that was in August of 2008. That was before he was president, but after his nomination, and that was in Reno. I had a meeting 2 days before that here with Aspen Institute with John McCain. I got nowhere with McCain, nowhere. And but both of them responded to my question to them: if you had your preference, what would you have as transportation fuel in America? Now know this: 70% of all the oil in the world goes to transportation. So you have to address the problem at that point. And I asked both of them the same question, and they both said battery. Said if we could have, and I said, you realize that a battery will not move an 18-wheeler. They both had exactly the same response. It won't. And no, it won't. So in the meeting with Obama, he asked if he could take notes. I said, sure, take the notes. And then I got pretty enthusiastic at one point, pulled out a Sharpie and wrote all over the tablecloth. My wife was at a fundraiser for Obama in Las Vegas. I wasn't there. And he said, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your husband trying to solve the energy problem for the United States. Said I was very impressed when he wrote all over the tablecloth. And I said, that does it. Now I write on the tablecloth when I'm not even, it impresses the president, and
But I want to get to the core of this. You are both, you're both big businessmen. You deal a lot with politicians. What have you learned in the last year about this energy issue, about why it is so difficult for the House and Senate to give us a decent, clean energy bill? What is blocking it? Is it just money of the oil and?
I think I can give it to you in 3 minutes. In the House, it's H.R. 1835. That bill addresses just exactly what I want to do. I want to get started. You've got to start someplace, get an oar in the water. Guy told me one time, he said, when was the best day to plant a tree? I hesitated. He said, it was 20 years ago, wasn't it? And I said, yes, it would be. He said, just in case you didn't plant it, what's the second best day? Today. We've got to get started on a plan. And so I said, target the 8 million 18-wheelers. That's simple. If we can accomplish that in 7 years, that's 2.5 million barrels of oil, then that's half of what we get from OPEC. So if we could cut OPEC in half with 8 million trucks, now we have 250 million vehicles in the United States. I'm not asking for those. Just go after the 18-wheelers and see where it goes from there. But what I've said to the White House, look, go in. And I didn't tell this to the president. I told this to David Axelrod. And David and I talked, and I said, get the president to go in and say that all federal vehicles purchased in the future will go to domestic fuel. Battery, hybrid, ethanol, I don't care. Anything that's American will solve the problem that I'm after, which is a security issue. So get off of the OPEC oil, because money goes there, and I promise you some of that goes to the Taliban. So we are paying for both sides of a war. When we have a fuel in America, that will take us out of that kind of situation, and we really look stupid doing it. I have people around the world ask me, they say, why you import more oil than any other country in the world? 67% of our oil comes from foreign oil. Now, I'm fine with the oil from Canada and Mexico. I'm very uncomfortable with oil from the Mideast. But the president said when he was nominated that he said in 10 years we will not import any oil from the Mideast. So he's on the line. He's promised us that. And I told Axelrod, I said, for gosh sakes, have him speak up and say all federal vehicles in the future will be on domestic fuel. You don't have to pick the fuel for them. Let them pick it for themselves. Anything will work.
And what did they say?
After 45 minutes, Axelrod said, Mr. Pickens, you got to understand yes is an answer. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. So I have to think he's not the guy that's doing the energy plan for the
Ted, what's your experience? You know, Tim Wirth at the UN Foundation, which you've created, has been just an incredibly energetic and important leader in pressing this climate legislation. What have you learned at the UN Foundation? What's standing in the way of the logic of Boone, of the logic of climate? What is stopping this?
I think that the coal and the oil industries did a good job of buying ads and confusing the issue with clean coal, just like the cigarette companies did when their backs were to the wall with legislation. They postponed legislation for a long time too, and I like making money, and I like being rich because I was poor and I didn't like that, and but I didn't put making money ahead of what's good for America and what's good for the American people. Otherwise, and what's good for the people of the world. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given, Bill Gates and
Warren Buffett.
And Warren are getting big headlines because they want everybody to give half of what they have away, and I already did that 10 years ago. Big deal. Mm-hmm. I've given myself nearly. I've given away so much money that I'm concerned about my funeral expenses. Those ads. I'm thinking of signing up for one of those ads where you pay $9 a month for a couple of $1,000.
Let me interrupt because it ties in with Ted Turner and what he's all about. But we were on a CNN, a ham and egg act together, and the question was asked Ted Turner, if you have you're the largest landowner in America, and if you were told they're coming across you with some high voltage power lines, how would you respond to that? And Ted said, if it's good for America, it's good for Ted Turner. And I have a small ranch compared to Ted's. And they said, and you have a ranch? I said, I'm with Ted. If it's good for America, it's good for Boone Pickens.
Mm-hmm, that's great. We have so many people that have been attending this conference that are energy innovators and entrepreneurs and really do depend on framing legislation that sets the right incentives and creates the right policies for this industry to grow and explode. Given what you've just said, the way in which the oil industry and the coal industry have both confused the issue and used their resources to buy politicians.
And their 100-year history, remember, they've got a 100-year history. Jay Rockefeller, the senator from West Virginia, is a good friend of mine, and I think he's one of the decent, best senators. But when I talked to him about it, he said, Ted, I'm from West Virginia. What can I do?
He can't do anything but what he does. He
That's right.
represents
There's
West
too
Virginia.
many. The Senate, you didn't get the chance to talk about the Senate, but the Senate is where this legislation has gotten beaten.
That's right.
It got beaten in the Senate. The Senate is not representative. I mean, the small states that don't have big populations, if they had the, I'm concerned about our survival on this. I think probably we're going to work like dogs to get it changed, and hopefully within the next year or two we can do that, or if not the next 2, the next 4. One thing I'm not going to do is quit. I will not quit, and I don't think Boone will either. We might die, but we won't quit.
Boone said he has 14 more years. He just checked with his doctor. So
but we may not be successful. We didn't get Kyoto. We never got a bill on Kyoto. The same situation, only not as. We're in denial about it. Less than 50% of the American people think it's a problem, and the media have let us down too. The media, my greatest regret is that I let CNN get away from me. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I made a mistake. I got maneuvered out of it. But if I was running CNN, they'd be running this story back to back, and if the ratings suffered a little, so what? I'm sick of hearing about Lindsay Lohan. I want to. And it's not just this issue. It's nuclear weapons. At the UN, our president, the president of Russia, and president of China, they all voted to get rid of nuclear weapons at the UN, 100%. It was unanimous. And why aren't we getting rid of nuclear weapons? You know, we hear the excuse that the U.S. government can't handle but one problem at a time. They couldn't handle health care and the energy bill, so he picked health care over it, which I think was a mistake. Energy was more important than health care, but at any rate, they did it, and
so where do we?
paying the consequences.
This is my question.
I wonder whether our government is. It's worked well for 200 years most of the time, but like our energy policy, our government's old. I mean, maybe the Chinese government, where it's a command and control thing, at least on things like this, where they pick their smartest guys and they don't have to stand for re-election, so they can do what they think is right. Of course, you've got all kinds of other problems with that form of government. but we've got to have a government that works, and a government that works is one that's looking out for its citizens. And we just had this terrible Gulf spill in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, with solar panels, there's never been an oil spill at all, and not with windmills either. You're talking about clean, safe, and it's free.
Yeah.
I mean, how dumb could we be? I don't like being dumb.
Well, you know, look at, here we are dependent on oil from countries that the State Department has said 40% of the oil we import comes from countries that they do not recommend we travel there. Well,
That's a great statistic.
We buy oil from them, we're dependent on them, but don't go there because you're not safe. You're not safe because they're not friends of ours. They're not friendly to us. But look at who has done a very unusual job on solar panels and on wind. Germany. Germany doesn't even have good wind or sun. Why? Because they do not want to be dependent on natural gas from Russia. That's it. I mean, they're willing to subsidize wind and solar, get the best they can out of it, but that's safer for them, and I guess it's more comfortable than it is to be dependent on natural gas from Gazprom. Here we are, we just go along like goose. we just, it's cheap. We just keep buying it. The oil from,
So help us out here, both of you. Given the deck we've been dealt, given the balance of power in the Senate and the House, what should these people do? What can we do to change that?
Well, I go and lobby, and so does Boone. Even if you don't know your senator or your congressman, go see them and tell them the story as you understand it. And that does help, particularly if you're a constituent, in the state, in your home state. But you can go see other senators too, if they'll, or congressmen, if they'll see you. That's one thing that we can all do, and it is powerful. And also contribute to those that are right thinking on this issue and on the other issues. Because normally, a congressman or senator, if he thinks right on one issue, he thinks right on most of them. Not always. There are single issue issues, but most of the time, what we would call a good senator or a good congressman that agrees with you most of the time, and the League of Conservation Voters can give you, ratings on them. Anyway, that's one thing you can do.
Boone, what would you recommend?
I was going to make a point a while ago, and
Please.
I got off of it. But H.R. 1835 is the bill in the House. If that bill was put up standalone today, I'm told by the leadership in the House that it would get 350 votes. And that's the heavy-duty 18-wheeler vote. Now, we're over in the Senate, and the House keeps calling me, the guys over there, hey, get Harry Reid to do a standalone in the Senate. Well, standalone in the Senate is not the way the Senate operates. If something there is going to pass, they will then try to stack stuff on it that won't pass on its own. That makes sense. That's a strategy, and it's used continually in the Senate. So Senate Bill 1408 standing alone will be just like 1835 because they're the same bill. So they'll go right through. Okay, this is where we are today. They've tried to put the climate over on 1408, and they couldn't get 60 votes in the Senate. It isn't time for them to get the climate bill in, and so they then have taken it off. That was a Kerry Lieberman bill. And so then you move now, we're to Bingaman, and now they put two things on there. They want to control the fracking of these shale wells and get the EPA involved in it. And they got a lot of opposition to that. Second, they want to put, first, we're not going to have any liability on the Gulf of Mexico. So if a company drilling there had no liability cap, it could break the company. So the companies would not do that. In my meeting with Harry Reid, I said, you can't leave it open-ended on that. I said, you'll have Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips. And he said, in China. And I said, that's right. Those will be the players in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, if you want to develop the Gulf of Mexico, you better get a better plan than to say that it can break you if you had a blowout. Now remember, it's only one blowout in the United States in the Gulf, or West Coast, which is where it was Santa Barbara, Unocal, back 50 years ago. So the industry's had a pretty darn good record, and that this all at once cleared up kind of overnight. We went 100 days of every morning we got up and we could see the oil flowing out of the well, and nobody knew whether it was 2,000 or 50,000 barrels, which I thought unusual. But anyway, they finally figured out it was something closer to 50 than 2, and now it seems to, a lot of it been cleaned up. And so here we are, that what?
Well, of course, it's controversial, but there are some experts that are saying there's a big plume down on the bottom of the Gulf now, and God knows what's going to happen. It's not breaking down. But that's...
I know, but we're not debating that issue. The point is that I don't think you can leave it, or you're going to have to cap the liability, I think, to operate in the Gulf. But that's been put over on 1408. That's my stuff. And so both of those issues, the fracking and the cap on the liabilities. So that's going to be cleared up. Now, to answer the question, what's going to happen? We've got 8 legislative days left in September, is what we have. They come back in on the 14th. So we have 8 legislative days in September, and we have 8 days in October, and then you're out for the midterm elections. So there's 16 days in there for me to get done what I want to get done. Now, if I miss that, then I got lame duck after midterm. And a lot of stuff is passed in lame duck sessions. But if I can ever get it stripped down to stand alone, then we will then have an energy plan for America for the first time in 40 years. We've never had an energy plan. So this will be a meaningful energy plan if we can either get it, if the liability issue and the fracking issue, if they can get 60 votes for it, then mine goes with them. And that's fine with me. I can live with both of them to get done what I want to do. It's, you know, it really is a lot like making sausage up there. And, you know, it's a messy looking deal. And it doesn't look like what you started with, but you have something at the end, you know. So.
Ted, I think we'll stay away from the sausage. You're an investor in a solar farm. Tell us, first of all, about your investment and what you've learned from the experience, that what would be able to, what's needed to take this to scale? More cities, more communities, more states.
Okay.
What have you learned? Tell people about your own investment.
I think from what I've learned, I think almost as important as getting a bill that legislates what we want to get done is leveling the playing field. It's not level. Right now, both oil and coal, and I guess gas too to some degree, but I don't know as much about that, get heavy subsidies from the government. For instance, they're not paying for all the damage that's done by the emissions, neither coal nor oil. If they were, the estimates, Lester Brown was here, I think estimated that the cost of gasoline would be like $9 a gallon instead of $3. If that was if they just level the playing field, they wouldn't have to put subsidies on solar and wind. Both solar and wind would have big cost advantages because they don't pollute, so they wouldn't have any penalties that they should be.
Is yours a solar farm or is it solar thermal?
Solar. My investment's in a solar farm. One of my ranches in New Mexico had a location where there was a transmission line owned by Tri-State Cooperative, and also they were a customer that wanted to buy and we buy the electricity, and we're building it in the desert, a 250-acre farm, of which I have 10%, and Southern Company, which is our local Atlanta-based southeastern power company, the second largest in the United States, and they wanted to we've been able to bring them around wanting to make some investments in clean renewable energy. They're mainly coal and nuclear as far as their current generation system. The Southeast has a disadvantage. It's got a problem with solar power because we have a lot of clouds that diffuse the sunlight, and we don't have a good wind situation except offshore, and that's very expensive. So it's hard for them, but they have invested in this, and so far it's looking good. It'll be done next month, and it'll power 9,000 homes along the Tri-State Cooperative's routes, and we're really excited about it. I've been looking for quite a while to invest in both wind and solar, and possibly even geothermal. I think we need to do more research on geothermal. I have studied that some, as I have solar and wind, and it's got a lot of potential too. It's another clean, renewable source, and it certainly works where the heat is close to the surface, like the island of Hawaii has been powering 20% of their electricity from the geothermal that's very close to the surface. You know, there are a lot of volcanoes in Hawaii. I went and looked and visited one. And you go to Iceland, and virtually all of its electricity is generated from geothermal because they're very wealthy and geothermal. Now, I'm not saying we need to put geothermal in Yellowstone Park. Well, if I owned Yellowstone Park, remember Ronald Reagan wanted to sell it at one point. I was putting the money together when they took it off the market. Putting the group together.
Boone, let me ask you a parallel question. You've obviously been working with wind. What have you learned from this experience? What are the difficulties? Where are the hurdles? What are the roadblocks we need to break down?
Wind?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's priced off the margin. The margin is natural gas. So when natural gas is low, you can't finance a wind deal. So the numbers are today is you got natural gas $4 an MCF, and you've got to have $6 to finance a wind deal. So you saw last week Vesta, which is a big turbine manufacturer from the Netherlands, and they have factories here in the United States. They were way down, I think like 70 or 80% on revenues. And so, you know, it's kind of interesting because we like natural gas prices low, but it hurts wind. And but if we had a renewable energy standard, meaning
A national one.
Pardon me?
A national one.
Yeah, if we did, where the portfolios of all these utilities and energy producers had to be, they had to have 10%, 20%, whatever we decided, of renewables in the portfolio, then it would bring this on. And then you have a production tax credit, a PTC, and that has been in the mix at times, now out of the mix. And so it's interesting. When I first got in the wind business 5 years ago, I had people lined up to make deals with me. Today, nobody out there. It's pretty, but we put together, I've got a couple of guys that are very good in this business. And this year, well, it'll start this year and finish next year, but it'll be a total of 643 megawatts. That's about $1 billion worth of wind. And so that's pretty good, because the biggest year we had on wind in the United States was 6,000 megawatts. And I think this year it'll be something 600 or 700 megawatts. So the business has gone straight down, but again, you have to price against natural gas. Natural gas is cheap. You like that. You know, if you're hooked up to natural gas for your home, well, cheaper the better.
I want to open up. We've got two microphones out on the floor for questions. I know there's a lot of knowledgeable people here. If you have a question, would you raise your hand, and our friends with the microphone are going to bring one over.
Yeah, I have a question for T. Boone. My name is Bill Ayers, and I'm with a company called R3 Sciences. And have you looked at any of your gas to liquid projects, taking gas that you have and converting it to methanol or to DME? You know, because you look at 18-wheelers, you obviously have a problem with mileage with compressed natural gas.
Yeah, on the 18-wheelers, you'll go to LNG. It'll be liquefied natural gas. Methanol is, you know, it's always out there. It has been used, but we're better off on price to do LNG for the heavy-duty trucks. That usually somebody is concerned about the infrastructure, and that will come into place very fast. And the reason I say that, when I tell you about something, and if you said, hey, you claim you have a model for every one of these, tell me where that happened. And I do have a model for it on LNG. When you order the trucks, you'll have plenty of time to build the stations, the fueling station. So all that can come into play pretty quick. Now you've got LNG will be like over the road JB Hunt trucks, but they're also regional. You've got a regional corridor that is coming down the west coast of California, going back east to Arizona and back up to Salt Lake City, and then back to the west coast. And that's all coming into place with LNG fueling along the way. The compressed natural gas is used for vehicles where you're going back to the barn at night, for instance, like trash trucks. They work all day, go back in, you fuel them at night. And so compressed is used one way, LNG another way.
But and then you can, there are gas reserves scattered around the world that I've looked at some of those projects where you would go in and take that gas to liquids and with a plant and then move it out by tanker and all. There's some of those around. They have not been, I would say, wildly successful, but some have worked.
Great. Back there? We'll move down.
Hi, my name's Harvey Wasserman. I'm with Solartopia. Mr. Pickens, earlier today you talked about the war in Afghanistan and in somewhat negative terms. And I'd like you to comment, Mr. Turner and also Mr. Friedman, on what we could expect, how we can stop this war, and how we can start to shift our military expenditures into green power expenditures, and what effect that might have on our green-powered future.
Well, the war in Afghanistan, I don't understand it. It's mind-boggling to me. And I've had people accuse President Bush of going to Iraq for the oil. That didn't happen. We didn't get the oil. It's absolutely nuts to lose 5,000 people, have 31,000 injured, and spend $1.5 trillion, and you didn't even get the oil. And I went to the White House twice on that and had direct conversations with Bush on it. And he said, people will say that we were there for the oil. I said, that was 8 years ago. A lot's happened since then. A lot of money spent, a lot of lives lost. And I said, he said, well, how would you price it? I said, price it on the market every day. But he said, well, what structure would you have it? I said, just get the call on it. Get the call on it, and then that's a high-class problem. Then we'll figure out how we can get that in the hands of where it do best for America is the way to do it. He never took it serious. I went to Obama in the meeting I had with him for an hour and 20 minutes. That was one of the subjects I covered. Don't leave Iraq. Well, guess what? You know who got the oil? The biggest oil field is Ramallah, and it's 15 billion barrels. That is going to China. The Chinese got it. They have 2 other smaller fields. And here we were, we paid the price, and I don't get it. I mean, these kind of things are just, I can't believe it when I see them happen. And it really is, it's heartbreaking to me to lose our people and the Chinese end up with the oil.
Ted, do you want to take any comment on that at all?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to comment on that question at all?
No, this thing fell.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it would have been nice to steal their oil.
No, we weren't stealing. No.
But I think I disagree with Boone. I don't think we could have done it. It would look bad because imperialism is what World War II was about, and a lot. And I met a guy from India, and I said, "You got to be careful. Rupert Murdoch's going to take over your country." And he said, "We didn't fight the British to goddamn turn it over to Rupert Murdoch." I think we would have been at constant war if we'd have tried to take their oil, and then the whole world would have been against us. And I don't think.
So you like it going to the Chinese?
No.
Oh, okay.
It'll be sold to the open market.
It's not
but that's
sold
part
in the
of
open
world,
market.
I thought that's part of the world you didn't want to buy oil from. You didn't want to buy it in the Middle East. And last time I checked, Iraq's in the Middle East. We want to be independent with wind and solar and natural gas, Boone. I thought that was what we decided.
I've got the easiest job in the world. Let's go on to another question down
It's
here.
one of my best friends.
Down here. Great. Oh, did you have someone up there? Yes. Right. Well, someone up here, and then we'll come down to you. Sorry.
Don't y'all think we're funny together?
I think you ought to keep this show on
We've
the
got to have
road
pillow
daily,
talks.
because we'd all watch it.
This is the 3rd time we've done this. We're practicing. We're trying to make it to CBS.
Hold up that question.
We're going to replace Larry King.
Go back the first time you and I met, and just think just a second. The first time we met, tell them the story, And you said you should have kept CNN. If the first time we met, if we'd have done what you wanted to do, you'd have had CNN and we'd gotten everything else. Think where we'd be today.
We'd be rich.
Tell them the story.
Well, I was in my early 30s, and I wanted to take over a network. I thought I needed one of the big ones. And but I didn't know, and I knew I didn't have enough money to buy it. And I had to do an unfriendly takeover, and I was reading the Wall Street Journal because I hadn't gone to business school. I can't even read a balance sheet, and it said Boone Pickens takeover expert. So I said, well, I'll call him up and ask him. I said, Mr. Pickens, this is Ted Turner in Atlanta with TBS. I said, I'd like to talk with you about taking over NBC. And he said, okay. So we had a secret meeting in New York in an unnamed hotel room.
No, we didn't.
Wasn't it unnamed?
No, you came to Boca Raton, Florida. I was there.
Was it? This was 35 years ago. So he said,
he comes down there. And
I said, we'll merge with it was RCA then. RCA owned Hertz. And I said, what we'll do is we'll merge. I said, all I want is the network. We'll go ahead and buy it. We'll keep NBC. You'll be a partner with me, an equity partner, and we'll sell Hertz and RCA Records and all the other stuff for cash and pay down the debt, and we'll have a viable company.
Right, hold on, let me say it. Here we are, and I'm chairman of the All-American Wildcatters, which is a big deal. And so consequently, you get the Boca Raton Hotel, you get the top floor and the best suite and everything. That thing across it is 50 feet. It's 50 feet in that room. And he is walking, and he goes, never stops walking, telling me what the deal is. And
I was nervous.
And when he got through, I said, God, Ted, I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I said, I know nothing about any of NBC, Hertz, RCA. I don't understand. He said, I'll explain it all. All we have to do is take them over, and then.
And then he called me 2 weeks later and said, I'm going to buy, what were we going to buy, Texaco? He said, I got to drop out. And I couldn't find anybody else, so that was the end of that. But I came back and tried to buy the network a couple of years later. I kept learning more and trying to get more effective.
You started your own.
But I still did pretty good.
We go back a long way.
Hi, I'm Brian Klopp with the Bonobo Conservation Initiative. Thank you both for coming last night. We really appreciate it. And I just had a question. You said that one of the challenges is getting Washington to change on the national level regarding the national grass and the 18-wheelers. Why not start with a particular city, such as Salt Lake, and use that as a beta test or as a case study where maybe you put in a fueling stations and some big rigs that can run on the natural gas, and then start at a more local level and have the truckers who are then saving the finance on the gas, maybe they would then be able to put pressure and call for the demand. And also, when are you both going to take over The Daily Show?
Help me on the question. I'm not sure I understood it.
You have to make it
Sure.
more precise.
Why not start, instead of with Washington, why not start with a particular city and use that city as a beta test for natural gas fuel stations?
Make it work, say, in Cleveland, and then go out from there.
Right.
It'll take us a long time that way, and if you're going to just start in one city. And I'm trying very hard with the governors that are out here, and I met with all of them today, that they start out with that in their state on vehicles purchased by the state in the future would be on domestic fuel. Not necessarily natural gas, I don't care what it is, but the same thing I'm asking the president to do is that all federal vehicles purchased in the future by executive order would go to domestic fuel. And then I would hope in 2 or 3 months, the president would then tell the American people what he said he was going to do in July of 2008 was that we're going to be off Mideast oil in 10 years. And he would ask the American people, look, all of you, we're together, has nothing to do with politics. what we have to do is to get off oil from the Mideast. And he makes that plea to the American people. I have said that at town hall meetings. I had 38, and I was in something like, I don't know, 42 or 43 states last year. And I flew 629 hours to accomplish that. And I asked the people, would you, if the president asked you to do that, and you have 8 years to get on transportation fuel that is domestic. You and your family study this, look at it, and you've got plenty of time to make a decision. This would inform the American people and educate them to a level we would be more highly educated on energy than any other country in the world. And never again would we get caught behind because we'd know what was going on by the study preparing to make the decision. They make the decision, and it's all accomplished within 8 years. You have then solved the problem. And I would ask audiences, I'd say, would that offend you if the president asked you to do that? It's 99%. No, it doesn't offend you. And two, would you help out to get us off of oil from the Mideast? And people say, sure, I'll do my part. So I think all of that is going to happen. I think it will be accomplished. I think we will have first legislation this year. And I think the president has to come through on his promise to get us off of Mideast oil in 10 years. 2 years have passed. He's got 8 years to go.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. Boone, Ted, thank you very much. We got to close right now. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Something you don't know about Ted is that he had a carbon footprint audit done of all of his operations, his restaurants, his ranches, his plant, everything. And because he has managed his properties so well and returned the majority back to a natural state, he is sequestering 950,000 tons of carbon. Per year. And in addition to that, he has given millions and millions and millions of dollars to environmental protection, and he has the only privately funded endangered species fund in the world.
So in light of that, Ted Turner, we would like to award you with the first annual Our Day Green Leader Award. And thank you so much for your leadership.
It's even green. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Would you like to say something?
Thank you very much.
Day. Today's a very sacred day again, every day. And at the age of 12 years old, we were put through a ceremony. And through a ceremony, we look at the world in a different way through our eyes. And we learn more about prayer at the age of 12 years old. To understand, respect, honor, dignity, generosity. There's a lot of teachings that come when our sacred oral teaching starts. And we were told that every day to remind ourselves as we honor the morning star and to start the day, that life is sacred and that Grandmother Earth is a source of life, not a resource. So I'd like to say a prayer in that way to this beautiful day, to have a good mind and a good heart. If you stand up, I'd like to sing a song. Apetukele te wakila chaya tronkashiyelayo oshimalayo mwakakijelo wane wachinchaya o makiyayo hae. Apetukele te wakila chaya tronkashiyelayo oshimalayo makakijelo wane wachinchaya o makiyayo hae. Tungash la khataka. Apetukele kamako kaglutapo. Apetukele che hiachwa. Exucha sha hach makaka neche wichoni kha. Hache wichozani woki wanglaki. Nataku eche makaka neche na chanupa khayoklogia na. Uspaya kiapikha hache ukixia pichake. Apetukele hache wichozani kte hache. Nataku eche kachipi. Nacha apetuache na wakan tungash la khataka wushlapo. Hache ta connect to hiapika. Na we chose ani no woki wangla kiktelo. Thank you very much.